Welcome to the Boxing Gossip channel. Some quick thoughts on this video about the suggested offer that Team Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have apparently made to Team Deontay Wilder of $12 million. Strong arguments, strong opinions on both sides of the play. The pro-Anthony Joshua camp saying that if Deontay Wilder doesn't accept that offer, he is completely ducking. This is the biggest amount of money that Deontay Wilder has earned from a fight by 5 or 6 times. The counter argument is that $12.5 million does not represent a fair split of the purse, and given the amount of potential revenue that can be generated from the fight, $12.5 million is not a fair offer. Let me give you my take on this. I believe that the total value of this fight is probably in the $50 to $100 million range when you factor in ticket sales, sponsorship, pay-per-view revenue, etc., etc. And it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if within that estimate of 50 to 100 million, because that is a deliberately very, very broad estimate, that if the fight was built correctly, it could potentially hit the top segment of that bracket that I've estimated. So I do believe that this could potentially have a fight value of 75 to 100 mil. And I think 50 to 100 mil is the broad bracket to work to. Now, let's forget about the 12.5 million for 1 second. 12.5 million sounds like a hell of a lot of money. But what you've got to factor in is that usually these fights are done on a split basis. I believe Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko was done on a split. I believe Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker was done on a split. I believe that a mandatory fight that went to purse bids would be done on a 75-25 split. So fights are routinely done, on a split basis, especially the bigger fights, especially the biggest fights in the sport. And based on the numbers that I've forecast, a $12.5 million purse is between 25% and 12.5% as a split. If you believe the fight is only worth $50 million, this represents a 25% split of the purse. If you believe the fight is worth $100 million, this represents a 12.5% split of the purse. Now, Eddie Hearn Team Joshua appear to be being vocal about this 12.5 million number. What they're not being vocal about is, the percentage that represents. If they came out and said, look, we've offered Deontay Wilder an 80-20 split, there'd be uproar. That's not a fair offer. But what they're doing is giving the number, and they're kind of using the end number as a smokescreen, if you like. And, to people who maybe aren't involved in boxing, don't follow the sport regularly, they find it hard to understand why a guy like Deontay Wilder could reject 12.5 million when his biggest payday was 2.5 previously. But what they're neglecting is that if Wilder accepted that amount of money, he would be taking a far lower split than Joseph Parker reportedly did when he fought Anthony Joshua. Let's put it that way. So I think the whole point of coming out with the dollar amount is actually a little bit of a smokescreen. And whilst it would be a huge step up for Deontay Wilder in terms of his earnings, in the sport of boxing, how much you've earned in the past does not necessarily represent how much you will earn in the future. Take, for example, a mandatory challenger. I've already referenced this in the video. If a mandatory challenger's been earning 10, 20, 30 grand for a fight, and then they get a fight with Anthony Joshua, they can insist that fight goes to purse bids, and they will get 25% of the purse of the highest bidder. And the fact that they've earned 10 or 20 grand in a previous fight is completely irrelevant. So, whilst I agree that $12.5 million is a hell of a lot of money, And whilst if I was Deontay Wilder, I personally may well be inclined to take that amount of money in order to get it in the bank, especially if you think you can win. I do have a lot of respect for their decision if they decide to decline that offer. Now it may just be a starting negotiation from Hearn and Matchroom. Parker's team said that they were initially lowballed and then they met in the middle. Maybe that's the tactics again being employed, and maybe something can be worked out. But I don't think offering Deontay Wilder the equivalent of 15, 20 or even 25% in this fight is a fair representation of the value that he brings to the play. And I think Team Matchroom know that. And I think they know that when they make an offer like that, there is no chance that it's ever going to be accepted. I've speculated for quite some time on the channel now that the fight we may well see is Joshua-David Haye. If David Haye is successful in seeking revenge on Tony Bellew in their rematch next month. And I wonder whether Eddie Hearn and Joshua want to take that fight with Deontay Wilder, who represents so much risk and who's clearly going to demand a substantial cut of the purse. I wonder if they want to take that risk against a guy like Deontay Wilder when there are older fighters like David Haye who are so well known to the British public and could represent an easy payday. So the sceptical part of me wonders, have they put that offer out certain that it's going to be rejected? And have they put that offer out basically as a smokescreen to the public so that they can say to the public, look, we're not ducking Wilder, we've made him an offer that's 5 times the amount of money he's earned in the past. And he's declined it. He's the one ducking us. Is that the game they're playing? Let's not forget, Joshua's core fan base is a casual fan base. There are people who watch YouTube channels like mine who follow Joshua who are hardcore boxing fans, but the core market is a casual fan base who probably don't understand the way boxing splits work, and they may be sitting there thinking that Wilder's ducking because he's rejected the $12.5 million. For me to offer Deontay Wilder a percentage that represents less than what Joseph Parker's percentage was, and that represents potentially less than what a random mandatory challenger would be able to get at purse bids, is not a fair offer, and it is an offer that is unlikely to result in the fight getting made. And Eddie Hearn must know that, and Anthony Joshua and Team Joshua must know that. So maybe it's just the start of negotiations. Maybe we will see this fight be getting made, but I've long suspected they will wait another year or two. Deontay Wilder's 32. Let's see if he starts to age in the next 12, 18, 24 months. Maybe they'd rather take him on in 18 months than now when he appears to still be in his prime. That's a legitimate question. Maybe they don't want to gamble their future earning potentials when they believe they can fight guys like a returning Tyson Fury or a returning David Haye, who are possibly bigger names in Great Britain. Maybe will do even bigger pay-per-view numbers and perhaps are deemed as lower risks. That's just my take on it, but I'm skeptical, and I do believe the 12.5 million is a smokescreen. When they were doing the deal with Vlad, or when they were doing the deal with Joseph Parker, I don't recall numbers like that being thrown out and being leaked to the press. I recall whispers of split percentages. I remember David Higgins from the Joseph Parker camp talking about the split negotiations and how it was between 30 and 35%, and they were going to look to meet somewhere in the middle. Those are the kind of conversations that have been had in the past when fights have been made. Not just throwing out large numbers not associated to a split. Look, the difficulty is Wilder could accept any amount of money because he wants to fight, and Wilder could accept any amount of money because it's more than he's earned in the past. But you've got to draw a line somewhere. Should he accept $5 million because it's double what he's earned in the past? Should he accept $10 million because it's quadruple what he's earned in the past? The truth is that the way these purses are calculated is in terms of split percentages. And, if this is a $100 million fight and, Wilder ends up taking 12.5 million, you are essentially talking an 87.5 to 12.5% split, which is just, ludicrous. So, my take is it's a smokescreen. I think Hearn had to be seen to be negotiating. I don't think with the public pressure they could have ignored Deontay Wilder. I think they have to, you at least be seen to be making the effort to negotiate, and then I believe when fights are made against other fighters, they'll refer back to this and talk about how Deontay Wilder turned down the offer to earn 5 times his career high payday. That's my take. I'm afraid my sympathy on this one is with Team Wilder as opposed to Team Joshua. The splits are where it's at in elite boxing, and you know, when they're talking these big numbers, always convert in your mind what that represents as a split, because that's, you know, how business is done. That's my take on it. Don't be surprised to see Joshua David Haye. I've been saying it for quite some time. I've been wrong more than I've been right though, so we shall see. Leave your comments in the section below. Let me know why I'm wrong. Let me know if you agree with me. If you appreciate the content, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new, please subscribe.